Before we begin, it's important to be clear about intent. This video discusses a real act of mass violence that resulted in the loss of innocent lives. Nothing here is meant to glorify harm, amplify violent rhetoric, or promote speculation. The purpose of this video is to provide clarity, verified context, and measured explanation at a moment when misinformation, sensational headlines, and emotionally charged commentary are widespread. This video avoids graphic detail. It avoids quoting violent writings. It avoids inflammatory language. What it does instead is slow the conversation down. Because understanding a tragedy responsibly requires time, distance, and context, especially when a story resurfaces long after the initial shock has passed. This is a comprehensive breakdown of the Audrey Hale case as it exists in the public record, why FBI documents have become part of renewed discussion, and what that actually means for the public moving forward. The Covenant School shooting in Nashville, Tennessee occurred in March 2023. It was an act of mass violence that shattered a school community and devastated families, educators, and students. The victims of this attack remain the center of gravity for the entire case. Their lives, their families, and the ripple effects of loss must never be eclipsed by discussion of the person who carried out the violence. As with many tragedies of this magnitude, immediate media coverage was intense. National outlets reported on the event, public officials issued statements, and the community entered a period of mourning and reflection. Over time, however, public attention shifted, as it often does. News cycles moved on. Broader debates about school safety, mental health, and law enforcement responses continued in the background. But cases like this do not end when headlines fade. They continue quietly through investigations, legal reviews, records requests, and unanswered questions about transparency. Eventually, those unresolved elements resurface, sometimes through court proceedings, sometimes through journalism, and sometimes through partial disclosure of information. That is what brought this case back into public conversation. Not a new crime, not new victims, but new reporting about existing records. To understand what is being discussed now, we need a clear timeline, one grounded strictly in confirmed facts. On the day of the incident in March 2023, Audrey Hale carried out an armed attack at the Covenant School. Law enforcement responded and ended the threat. Several students and staff members were killed. Emergency response protocols were activated. Medical services, police agencies, and federal partners became involved. The immediate priority was safety, evidence preservation, and ensuring there was no ongoing threat. Following the incident, investigators recovered physical evidence, digital devices, and written materials connected to the perpetrator. This is standard procedure in cases involving mass violence. From that moment onward, the case entered a long investigative phase. This phase often receives less public attention, but is legally and ethically complex. Authorities must evaluate evidence carefully, determine relevance, and decide how much information can be released without causing additional harm or encouraging imitation. Public curiosity often centers on motive. People want to understand why such acts occur, believing that explanation offers prevention. However, law enforcement agencies now operate under a growing body of research showing that excessive focus on perpetrators, particularly their writings or grievances, can unintentionally increase the risk of copycat violence. For this reason, agencies frequently exercise restraint. In the Audrey Hale case, officials acknowledged the existence of writings and other records but declined to release their contents at the time. Their rationale was grounded in concerns about public safety, investigative integrity, and ethical responsibility. This decision frustrated some members of the public, while reassuring others. Both reactions are understandable. Transparency builds trust, but unchecked disclosure can cause harm. The tension between these principles lies at the heart of this case's ongoing debate. In the United States, public records laws allow citizens and journalists to request access to government-held documents. These laws are essential for accountability, but they are not absolute. Certain records may be withheld, redacted, or delayed when they involve active investigations, sensitive personal data, potential public harm. Over time, multiple records requests were filed seeking access to materials related to this case. These requests underwent review processes involving local agencies, legal counsel, and, in some instances, judicial oversight. What's critical to understand here is that records requests do not automatically result in full disclosure. They often lead to partial releases, summaries, acknowledgments of existence, or denials that become newsworthy in their own right. The renewed attention surrounding this case emerged not from a single dramatic release, but from incremental legal and reporting developments. The phrase FBI documents has fueled much of the recent online discussion. It is important to unpack this carefully. The FBI frequently assists local law enforcement in major investigations, particularly those involving mass violence. Their role may include digital analysis, behavioral assessment, and interagency communication. An FBI document does not necessarily contain explosive revelations. Often, it contains procedural analysis, evidentiary review, or confirmation of investigative conclusions. In this case, available reporting indicates that FBI materials relate to analysis rather than discovery of new threats or networks. There is no verified evidence in public records suggesting undisclosed accomplices or an ongoing operational risk connected to this case. This distinction matters. Oversimplified headlines can imply far more than the documents justify. Modern media ecosystems amplify conflict and controversy. Stories involving violence, secrecy, and identity are especially vulnerable to distortion. Online platforms reward emotionally charged reactions, not careful explanation. As a result, this case has been framed in dramatically different ways depending on the outlet or platform. Some narratives emphasize alleged secrecy. Others focus on political or cultural implications. Some blur the line between confirmed reporting and speculation. This fragmentation makes it difficult for audiences to discern what is actually known. Responsible analysis demands restraint. When facts are unclear, the answer is not speculation, it is patience. Equally important is what the evidence does not show. There is no credible documentation supporting claims of organized extremist collaboration, suppressed warnings of imminent attacks, hidden accomplices. The persistence of such claims online reflects broader anxieties, but they are not substantiated by verified records. This is precisely why careful, factual discussion is necessary. Speculation spreads faster than correction, but it does not serve public safety. Acknowledging restraint does not mean abandoning transparency. Victims' families, journalists, and members of the public all have legitimate interests in understanding how violent events are investigated and documented. The challenge is finding an ethical balance. How much information educates without inciting? How much disclosure serves accountability without harm? This case contributes to a broader national conversation about post-incident transparency and standards for information release. Cases like this influence future policy decisions. Law enforcement agencies study outcomes, media organizations reassess coverage practices, legislators consider reforms. Nothing happens in isolation. The way this case is discussed today shapes how similar incidents will be handled tomorrow, legally, journalistically, and culturally. This video avoided dramatization deliberately. Violence already speaks loudly enough. What communities need afterward is clarity, context, and care. Understanding timelines, documents, and legal frameworks does not make tragedy disappear, but it can reduce confusion and misinformation. The Audrey Hale case is not resurfacing because danger has returned. It has resurfaced because unresolved questions about transparency, media framing, and public understanding remain. This video aimed to ground those questions in verified information rather than speculation. At the center of this case are victims whose lives were taken senselessly. That reality matters more than document, headline, or controversy. Responsible discussion honors them by choosing accuracy over outrage. Thank you for watching.